From heroes who left it all out on the field to villains who hilariously realised they were about to not exist, these characters were all acutely aware that they were positively cooked. Yet where sci-fi horror is concerned in particular, you won't find more memorable instances of characters taking stock of their lives as they shuffle off their mortal coils. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 best I'm dead and I know it moments in sci-fi horror movies. Number 10. Lee Abbott, A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place offers up an especially badass and unforgettable instance of a character who is absolutely, positively in the know that their goose is cooked, and at least makes the best of it. In the alien invasion horror flick's climax, Father Lee, played by John Krasinski, is forced to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to lure one of the extraterrestrial monsters away from his children, Regan, played by Millicent Simmons, and Marcus, played by Noah Jupe, who are holed up inside a nearby truck. Realizing that his children are basically moments away from being torn apart by the creature, Lee knows there's only one thing he can do. In his final moments, he signs to his deaf daughter, "I love you, I have always loved you," and then screams at the top of his lungs. At that moment, the monster turns its attention away from Regan and Marcus and vaults towards Lee, killing him while his horrified kids are able to ride the truck back to the safety of the family home. Lee knew exactly what he had to do, and damn it, he did it. Number 9. Carlos Olivera, Resident Evil Extinction. The Paul W.S. Anderson-led Resident Evil adaptations were hardly great on the whole, but they did have their moments, like fan-favourite character Carlos Olivera, played by Oded Fehr, going out like an absolute gangster in the third film, Resident Evil Extinction. Carlos sadly gets bitten amid all the undead dodging mayhem, and being the smart cookie that he is, naturally appreciates that his days are numbered. And he certainly finds one hell of a way to make the most of his impending demise by driving a tanker truck into a massive crowd of zombies, lighting some dynamite in the truck, and then waiting for nature to take its course. In the meantime, as the zombies begin to lunge toward Carlos inside the truck, he does the most hilariously cool thing imaginable. He sparks up a doobie and smirks at the utterly ridiculous situation he's found himself in, seconds before the explosion atomizes him and a couple hundred zombies in the vicinity. Killing Carlos was certainly a divisive choice given that he actually survived the events of the third game, but this was nevertheless an incredibly satisfying way to do it. Number 8. Victor, Underworld. Underworld. Not a great movie, not a bad movie, but is still remembered 20 years later for the freaking awesome climactic death scene of villainous elder vampire Victor. In the final fight, Selene finally manages to defeat Victor by using his own sword against him, slicing him in the face. As Victor stands to his feet, he gets about 30 seconds to process just what's happened to him. Selene holds up his blood-soaked blade, and just as Victor realizes he's dead meat, his head splits in two and he falls to the floor. While most of the characters on this list had some sort of agency in affecting their ultimate demise, for Victor the deed was already done, and yet unlike about 99.9% of decapitation victims, he was given time to appreciate the gravity of it. Couldn't have happened to a nicer vampire. Number 7. Sok-woo, Train to Busan. The second of 3 protective daddies on this list now, we have Sok-woo, played by Gong-yoo from the brilliant Train to Busan. In the film's climax, Sok-woo is tragically bitten by a zombie, and knowing what grim future awaits him, he makes the tough call to put his daughter Soo-an, played by Kim Soo-an, in the train's engine room and leave her be, saying a tearful farewell to her as she screams for him. In his final moments of human clarity, Sok-woo then reminisces about Soo-an's birth while smiling to himself, then hurls himself off the back of the train to his death before he loses control. It was the only reasonable choice Sok-woo could have made under the circumstances to keep his daughter as safe as possible given the inevitability of him joining the undead horde, but it's an utterly heart-rending scene all the same. Number 6. McCready and Childs, The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing concludes with one of the most brilliantly bleak, nihilistic endings in the history of cinema, not merely horror. In the film's final moments, McCready, played by Kurt Russell, blows up the research station, seemingly killing the alien shapeshifter, after which he's joined outside by the station's burning remnants by the only other survivor, Childs, played by Keith David. The pair then share a drink, each acknowledging their distrust of the other as the station burns around them, and they wait to freeze to death without shelter. And yet, knowing that they've seemingly prevented the Thing from reaching civilization by starving it of human hosts, there's an unexpected nobility in their eerie quiet of this ending. Now, of course there are fan theories about which of the duo could actually be the Thing, and a 2002 video game of dubious canonicity had its own take on the matter, but within the context of the movie itself, McCready and Childs both know they're done for, and quietly see out their fate while sucking down some whiskey. Number 5. Captain Miller, Event Horizon. Event Horizon's Captain Miller, played by Lawrence Fishburne, is often celebrated for making one of the smartest decisions in horror movie history. When he boards the abandoned titular ship and watches a nauseating video log of the prior crew doing some incredibly twisted things to each other, he promptly declares, "We're leaving." And while Miller isn't able to secure his own safe exit, he does at least ensure that the 3 other survivors are propelled to safety. Miller ultimately hatches a plan to split the event horizon in 2 with explosives, with one section acting as a lifeboat for his remaining crew members. But before he can finish the job, he's attacked by a grotesquely mutilated Dr. Weir, played by Sam Neill, who makes it clear he has no intent on letting any of them live. And so Miller knows what he has to do for the greater good, grabbing a detonator and setting off the explosives, which either kills him or causes him to be sent straight to hell. Either way, Miller went to his fate with his eyes open. Number 4. Frank, 28 Days Later. Aw, poor Frank. 28 Days Later's kindly cab driver Frank, played by Brendan Gleeson, offers some swift assistance to protagonist Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, and Selena, played by Naomi Harris, though it isn't long before he ends up succumbing to an horrific fate. As the group ponders their next steps, Frank tries to shoo away a crow, only for a drop of blood from an infected corpse nearby to land in his eye, immediately infecting him with the rage virus. Frank knows immediately what this means, that his remaining living moments are numbered, and he's a danger to Jim, Selena, and most importantly to his young daughter Hannah, played by Megan Burns. And so, Frank spends his final seconds telling Hannah that he loves her, before insisting that she keeps away from him. As Hannah approaches him, unaware of the situation, he angrily shoves her away for her own good, just as the infection takes hold, and he's shot dead by nearby soldiers. It's a devastating, tragic fate, but in the very least Frank did everything he could to ensure he wasn't a danger to his daughter in what little time he had left. Number 3. Billy, Predator. In many respects, Predator's Billy, played by Sonny Landham, is the movie's realest character, or in the very least, he has the most acute understanding of the fact that they're probably not making it out of that damn jungle alive. Billy is certainly scared by his brief glimpse of the Predator, but rather than let his fear force him into reckless behaviour, he accepts his fate and uses his remaining time to give the rest of the group a fighting chance. After seeing Mac, Bill Duke, and Dylan, Carl Weathers, killed, Billy decides to throw down his guns, cut his chest with a machete, and basically dare the Predator to come and get him. Which summarily it does, promptly killing him just as he knew it would. While fans have argued about whether or not Billy may have made an earnest attempt to fight the Predator head-on, it's clear from what he says leading up to his demise that he knew precisely what was coming and opted to go out on his own terms. Number 2. Vasquez and Gorman, Aliens. James Cameron's Aliens features one of the all-time most potent and sublimely badass sacrificial deaths in cinema history, when Marine Vasquez, played by Jeanette Goldstein, and Lieutenant Gorman, played by William Hope, end up cornered in a vent by xenomorphs and know there's only one way out. With Vasquez critically wounded by xenomorph blood, the aliens pushing in from both sides, and the pair out of ammo, the wet around the ears commanding officer Gorman grows the toughest of all spines and decides to pull the pin on his grenade. In their final moments, the two clutch the grenade together and brace for death, the resulting detonation obliterating them and the surrounding xenomorphs. Rather than simply wait for the inevitable, the pair did the best they could to take their fate into their own hands and at least ensure their attackers were taken out alongside them. And of course, it's all punctuated by Vasquez's unforgettable and strangely affectionate departing one-liner, "You always were an asshole, Gorman." Number 1. Bert Gummer, Tremors 7, Shrieker Island. Yes, there was a 7th Tremors movie released in 2020, and it saw franchise MVP Michael Gross, the only actor to appear in every film in the series, finally take his curtain call. After spending 3 decades playing quirky survivalist Bert Gummer, Gross finally put the character out to pasture in Tremors 7, Shrieker Island, with a sacrificial demise absolutely befitting his legendary status. At the film's end, Bert and the assembled heroes set a trap to ensnare the graboid queen, with Bert and researcher Jimmy, played by John Hader, planning to get it to chase them off a cliff, before diving out of the way at the last minute. Except Bert decides to shove Jimmy clear from the cliff edge and lay down his life to ensure the queen dies, winningly leaping into the queen's path, while proudly flipping the bird. At this point, the queen gobbles Bert up and falls over the cliff edge, where it careens into a trap of spikes and dynamite and is destroyed. Though many fans were sad to see Bert go, especially as it likely signalled the formal end of the Tremors franchise, it was certainly a fittingly bonkers exit for the character. Rest well, Bert.